Hey guys, welcome to my little fan channel, 49ers fan channel. Um, I've been thinking, I had this channel running for a while, uh, had it on different name. Um, Things got screwed up, I had to start all over again. So here I am, all over again, doing it for the second time. Um, I was going to make some videos about 49ers, and what a better moment to do it than right now. Um, Cam Newton came out the other day with some rather stupid comments. I can't put it any other way. It is stupid. Um, so I was thinking, like, since Cam has so strong opinion about Dak and Purdy and Goff and Tua, let's take a deep dive into Cam Newton. Let's expose him for the mediocre quarterback he was, whatever. That's it's a reason he's no longer in the league. Um, he's a one-hit wonder. He had a one good season where he got propped up by a good defense. He had some uh, running that he was doing. So he's basically a glorified running back that can throw things. Um, but he's a one-hit wonder. He had one okay season. So let's take a deep dive into his stats and let's compare them to Brock Purdy. I don't care about Dak Prescott. I don't care about Goff. I don't care about Tua. All I care about is Purdy. So let's compare Mr. Cam Newton to Brock Purdy. And let's see how he stacks up against Purdy when it comes to being a game manager or a system quarterback or whatever he wants to call it. Um, I never thought Cam Newton was any good. He was too flimsy for me. All he relied on was his legs. That's the only thing he had. So let's start off with Brock Purdy, shall we? Um, let's see here. My source for stats is ESPN, just so that's said. So there's no bullshit here. I have ESPN's website open and where they have stats of every freaking player, every season, everything is included. I'm not going to go through all stats. I'm going to go through those that I think is important, and we're going to compare them head to head. So let's start with Purdy, and I'm not even interested in rushing. I'm all about the passing here now. So let's take Cam Newton's passing stats versus Brock Purdy's passing stats. Let's see. Let's start. In 2022, last year, Brock Purdy played 9 games. He completed 114 throws. He attempted 170, which was a completion rate of 67.1. He threw for 1,374 yards. He averaged 8.1 yards per attempt. He had 13 TDs. He had 4 interceptions. He got sacked 11 times. He had a QBR last year of 67.5. Now let's go to this year. He so far played 13 games according to this one. So this one is probably not 10-3. Yeah, 13 games. So this is updated. He has completed 252 passes out of 359 attempts. His completion rate has gone up from 67.1 to 70.2. So it's pretty good, nice increase in completion rate. So far, he's thrown for 3,553 yards. He has averaging 9.9 yards per throw. He has 25 TDs. He has 7 interceptions and 26 sacks. His QBR this year is 74.6. So that's something we should remember. Remember this now. If you want to go into ESPN and look up, it's ESPN.com, NFL, player stats, and then you look up Brock Purdy, and it will come up for you. Now, that was Brock Purdy. We can go back and forth here. That's no problem. Now we're going to look into Cam Newton. Here you see, we're talking about passing here now, not rushing. So remember, let's keep one number just to make it easy. because this is like that. This something that displays or explains the quarterback in a very detailed way, very condensed. Let's focus on the QBR, shall we? So remember now that Brock Purdy had. Let's take this year. Brock Purdy had 67.5 last year and 74.6. So remember 67.5 and 74.6. Ho ho ho. Cam Newton, in the 2011 season, he played 16 games. He completed 310 passes, 517 attempts, 60% completion rate, 4,051 yards, averaging 7.8 yards per throw, 21 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Not a very great ratio, TD to INT. He had 35 sacks. He had a QBR of 56.6. 56.6. Not even close to Brock Purdy. In 2012, he played 16 games again. He completed 280 throws out of 485. So his production went down. His attempts went down. His completion percentage went down, 57.7. He threw for 3,869 yards, 8 yards per on average per throw, 19 TDs and 12 interceptions. He was sacked 36 times. He had QBR of 55.7, so it went down. Now, in 2013, he played 16 games. He completed 292 out of 473. So we see a trend here. Everything is going down. Completion rate, 58.5. Not good. It went down. 3,100 and 61.7. I looked at the wrong one. 61.7. So he went a little bit up on that one. 3,379 yards total. He averaged 7.1. So that one went down. He had 24 TDs, 13 interceptions, and he was sacked 43 times. He then had a QBR of 64.3, so it went a little bit up from 55. 2014, he played 14 games, so 2 games less than the 3 previous seasons. He completed 262 passes out of 448, so that dropped. 58.5, that's the one that I said earlier, so I kind of like. So 58.5 completion rate. Ooh. Not good, Cam. And you sitting there talking about people being game managers. He threw for 3,127 yards, which is not much. It's not something to... 7 yards on average per throw, 18 TDs, 12 interceptions. His ratio, TDs to interceptions, is nasty bad. Poor. He had 38 sacks that year, and QBR of 56.2, second worst of his 4 first years. Then we go to 2015, which was his MVP season. This was his one-hit wonder season, where he got propped up by a fairly, I wouldn't say a good defense, and somewhat an okay O-line. He can blame it on. I didn't have weapons. He had Ted Ginn that year. Ted Ginn is nothing to knock on. He was a fairly okay wide receiver for as long as he was. He was part of the 49ers for a year or two. I think it was under Harbaugh. And from what I can remember, he had some nice games. So 2015, the MVP season, or the MVP season for Cam. Let's see what he did. He played 16 games. He completed 296 out of 495. 59.8 completion rate. He became an MVP with a 59.8 completion rate. 3,837 yards, 7.8 on average, 35 TDs and 10 interceptions. He had 33 sacks, and his QBR was 61.4. 61.4. Remember now, this is his MVP season. His MVP season stats are terrible. Terrible. So that tells you the name of the land and the state of the land in the NFL in 2015. Hello? So 2016, the year after his MVP season, he played 15 games, 270 completed passes out of 510 attempts. Completion rate 52.9. It's so poor. This is so poor. 3,509 yards, 6.9 yards per attempt, 19 TDs, 14 interceptions. Again, poor. I am baffled. He had that year 36 sacks. His QBR in 2016, the year after he was MVP, was 47.1. This is so bad. He's talking about game managers. He's the worst of them. 2017, let's see if it becomes any better. And all these years that I've been doing up until now is with Carolina, okay? 2017, 16 games played, 291 passes completed out of 492. He has a completion rate there of 59.1. Went up from 52.9. 3,302 yards, 6.7 on average. That one went down. 22 TDs, 16 interceptions. His ratio, TDs to EINT ratio, is terrible. 35 sacks. That year he had a 52.7 in QBR, so it went up a little bit from 47.1. Not much. Anything under 60 is freaking terrible. It's garbage. It's garbage. Even in his 2015, he was barely over 60 in QBR. 61.4. So let's go to 2018. He's still with Carolina. 14 games played, 320 completed passes out of 471. His completion rate went up a little bit there. He's now up to 67.9. 3,395 yards, 7.2 per average per attempt. 24 TDs, 13 interception. The ratio there was a little bit bigger. Sacks 29. His QBR 53.2. 53.2. So now we go to 2019. His last year in Carolina, he only played 2 games. 50 completed passes out of 89. Completion percentage is 56.2. Yards 572. Average 6.4. 6 sacks. No TD. 1 interception. 22.5 in QBR. So he got booted out of Carolina and went in 2020. He went to New England. And let's see if the grass got any greener on the other side of the fence. 15 games played, 242 completed passes out of 368. Production went down, 65.8% in completion rate. His yardage was 2,657, which makes it 7.2 yards on average per attempt. TDs 8, interceptions 10. So he has had more interceptions than TDs in 15 games. And in 15 games, he only mustered to throw 8 TDs. I don't know what that came from. So, in New England, in 2020, he played 15 games. And he had 8 TDs and 10 interceptions. He had 31 sacks. His QBR was 39.4. 39.4. So I guess he didn't like New England because he left them and went back to Carolina in 2021. He then played 8 games, completed 69 throws out of 126, which made it to be a 54.8 completion percentage rate, 684 yards, 5.4 yards per average per attempt, 4 TDs, 5 interceptions, 10 sacks. His QBR was 30.4. Here we have one-hit wonder, glorified running back, sitting on his own podcast or whatever it is, spewing bullshit about Dak Prescott, Goff, Tua, and Purdy. I'm only interested in Purdy because that's my team. And not any of his stats are even anything remotely close to what Purdy has been doing for a year and a half. Or a season, 1.5 seasons. Even in Cam Newton's MVP season, he is not even close to what Purdy is doing. I applaud stupidity. This Cam Newton character, he is something special, isn't he? Maybe he should think about what he did in his own NFL career before he's starting to talk bullshit about others. The highest QBR, and this is the number that I want to highlight for you guys. His highest QBR was in 2013, 64.3. In his MVP season, 61.4. His lowest was 22.5, but they only had 2 games that year. But in 2020, when he played for New England, he played 15 games. He only missed 1 game. And his QBR was 39.4. He had more interceptions than TDs. And this is, when I look at his stats, his TDs to interception ratio is poor. It's poor. Always been like that. Always. His QBR has never been over 65. His highest is 64.3. His average is in the low 50s. At best. At best. Maybe high 40s. If we go back to Brock Purdy, his worst QBR was last year, 2022, was 67.5. To this year, to this date, so far, this season, with 13 games played, his QBR is 74.6. 74.6. And Cam had... Remember Purdy, 74.6. Cam's highest is 64.3. So Purdy has 10 points, 10 plus some points, higher QBR than Cam Newton. And Cam Newton has never even been close. I want to say, when you look at these stats here for Cam Newton, they're terrible. How he even could be an MVP in 2015 with these stats? Let's highlight the 2015 again. 2015, 16 games played, completed 296 passes, 495 attempts. His completion percentage was 59.8. 59.8. Purdy is... Oops, wrong one. Purdy's completion rate last year was 67.1. This year, 70.2. There's a big difference between 70.2 and 59.8. Huge difference. Huge. Let's keep on going on the MVP season that Cam had on 2015. He threw for 3,837 yards. Let's see where Brock Purdy is so far this year with 3 games less played. Shall we? Oops! 3,553 yards. 3,553. So, basically, Purdy only needs to throw for 280 yards to throw for more yards than Cam did in his MVP season. And he has 4 more games to do. So let's continue on this MVP season that Cam Newton had. He was averaging 7.8 yards per attempt. Purdy this year is 9.9, which is ridiculous. Cam had 35 touchdowns in 2015, but he had 10 interceptions. That was the year with his lowest, if you compare the games played to interceptions thrown, that was the year he threw the least amount of interceptions. But he still took 33 sacks. And his QBR was 61.4. 61.4. And let's say where Brock Purdy is with touchdowns this year. So we have 4 games to go, and Purdy have thrown 25 touchdowns. So that means he has to have 10 more touchdowns to equal Cam Newton in his MVP season. But he has thrown only 7 interceptions, and Cam threw 10. So with 4 games to go, if we take 10 TDs and look at what Purdy has to do to equal the amount of touchdowns, basically, well, it's a very weird number, but you look at 3 touchdowns are basically on average to pass in the games. If you had 3, and 2, then you have 11 touchdowns, and then you have surpassed Cam. And if he managed to stay interception free for the next 4 games, but the thing here is every stat you can find on Cam Newton for how many years was it? Let's see here now. Because you have Purdy, he's 1.5 season. So you don't have that many. And these ads, they're driving me nuts. Let's see. So Purdy played 9 games last year, and he played so far 13 games this year. So that's a total of 22 games. So that's the sample size we have, but it's a good sample size because Cam had seasons where he played less games, so he didn't play full seasons every year. So it gives you a telling fact. Cam came in and into the league in 2011, and his last year was 2021. So. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the stats of what he has, and it's not good. I can compare these stats to any other QB in the league, and he would come out poorly, regardless of who it was. That would be fun to do. If I had enough time, I would do it. I don't have time to do it today, but I'll you know what? I'm gonna sit down one day when I have the time, and I'm going to go through Cam's full stats for the 10 years he played, and I'm going to take every freaking QB that is in the league today, but I'm going to look at the QBs that were in the league when he played and see how they stack up against the others, because I'm pretty sure that the year that he became an MVP, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of QBs that year who had better stats than him. I'm pretty darn sure that is the fact. Now let's add to this that looking at his stats and seeing that they're poor, they're piss poor. His stats are piss poor. He was a mediocre average QB, glorified running back, who kind of knew how to throw a ball. Nothing that I'm looking at here is screaming MVP to me. These stats are average at best. At best, average. They're hovering to be terrible. They're between terrible and average. I mean, 2020, he played 15 games for the New England Patriots. And he had a QBR of 39.4 for crying out loud. That's with 9 years of experience. It's ridiculous. And this is the clown that is sitting online talking about other QBs being game managers? No. No. He has the right for it to have an opinion. That's not what I'm saying here. But his opinion is bullshit. And he shouldn't be talking about stuff like that when if he had taken the time to look at his own stats. He's worse. If anyone was a game manager, it sure is him. None of these numbers jump out at you. And well, let's look at something. Let's look at something. While we are here, I want to look at something. Let's see now. No, not that one. $2015 so that's when he was MVP, right? Let's look at this. Again, I'm using ESPN. 2015. This player, this QB, played 16 games, completed 402 passes out of 624. Completion percentage rate was 64.4. He threw for 4,770 yards. He had 36 TDs. The average per attempt was 7.6. 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's a good freaking ratio. 36 TDs, 7 interceptions. QBR 68.4. All these stats in 2015 is for this QB way above Cam. Way above Cam. So they gave Cam Newton an MVP because he was a good runner. And that's how they went 15-1. Because he could run. This QB does not run, but he is facilitating throws because this was Tom Brady. And Tom Brady in 2015 was way above what Cam Newton did. Way above. Way above. These stats are way better. Way better. Now let's look at another dude. While we're in here, let's see now. I'm pretty sure that this QB is also going to be better. Let's see. Let's get the right year. Once again, I'm using ESPN, so it's the same source. 2015. Here we are. 16 games played. 347 completed passes out of 572. Completion percentage 60.7. Higher than Cam. 3,821 yards. Average for 6.7 per attempt. 31 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. QBR of 60. So that was not great. But it's very similar to Cam's. This was Aaron Rodgers. 2015. Who else? There was a QB in the league in 2015 that basically turned out to be bust. Let's look him up and let's see what numbers he had. Let's see. Once again, ESPN. 2015. Oops. Passing. He didn't play many games. He only played 9 games. So he didn't play enough games. Too bad. Who else was in the league at that time? Because I want to see. I want to get a sample size. Aaron Rodgers was kind of like right around what Cam did. Aaron had a few things that was higher than Cam. But Tom Brady was way above what Cam did on stats. And stats doesn't lie. Let's see. Who else was in that? I think, if I'm not mistaken, in 2015, I think Eli Manning was in there. Let's look up Eli Manning. Here we go. 2015, Eli Manning. Once again, ESPN as for source. Eli Manning played 16 games. He completed 387 passes out of 618 attempts. Completion rate was 62.6, higher than Cam. He threw for 4,432 yards, which I'm remembering right, is higher than Cam. 7.2 yards per attempt. 35 TDs, same as Cam. 14 interceptions, so 4 more than Cam. And his QBR was a little bit lower than Cam. So they're hovering right around each other. Some stats are worse for Eli, some stats are better for Eli. So why was an average Cam Newton MVP? Because he was running the damn football. Not because he was playing quarterback. He was running it. That's all it was all about. Let's, I think in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to look up something here now to see, just to see. Once again, I'm using ESPN. 2015 was his last year in the league. You probably know who I'm talking about then. I'm talking about Peyton Manning. He didn't play many games in 2015. 10 games. So his numbers are probably, of course, going to be low because of attempts and, total yards thrown. But for 10 games, so let's look at TDs to INT. That was terrible. Terrible for Peyton that year. 9 TDs and 17 interceptions. Not good. But you get my point. I think I made my point here. Cam Newton's 10 years or 10 seasons in the NFL has produced average to poor to terrible stats. He's a glorified one-hit wonder with 2015 as his highlight year. And basically, he won the MVP because he could run. Not because he could throw, not because he could facilitate other players. Basically, he was running for his life, and that was what he got voted MVP for. Talk about being in a game manager, like he says everyone else is. The stats tells us that he is the ultimate game manager, and there you have it. The stats does not lie. If you disagree with me, that's fine, but look at the stats and they will tell you the truth. Cam Newton, mediocre. He's mediocre at best. So take care.